on this episode of Rebel Spirit Radio.
We have to create new neural pathways. Without that, chances are we're not going to get lasting results. You know, one of the things that people love about my work is that I can show healing and show people releasing pain even under medical equipment. So you can see it. And I'll show people to do that in a matter of minutes, where you'll see a scan where a person has pain and you can see all over the scan, it's all red, they have pain. And I'll show them how to use their mind to release their pain. And I always tell everybody, you have to make sure to follow through and ingrain it to create this new way of thinking and feeling. And so it's your new norm, because so it is. So we have to really change the brain.
Welcome to Rebel Spirit Radio, exploring the frontiers of spirituality, consciousness, the esoteric, and humanity's sacred relationship with the living earth. I'm your host, Nick Mather, and in this episode, I am joined by author Brandy Gillmore to discuss her book, Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body. Brandy explains how an accident left her wheelchair-bound in debilitating pain and deemed incurable by the medical establishment. She explains how she tapped into the mind's innate ability to heal, combined with clearing negative emotions held in the body so she could become her own cure. Also, please be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you use to listen to or view podcasts. Your support is truly appreciated. Brandy Gillmore is a researcher and mind-body healing expert who has been captivating audiences worldwide with her incredible ability to demonstrate radical healing using only the mind. She has even shown visual proof of the power of the mind using medical thermal imaging. Due to these breakthrough results, her case studies have been published in a prestigious medical journal. She has also delivered a mind-expanding TEDx talk and has been featured in several documentaries. Brandy's groundbreaking discoveries stem from her own debilitating injury. After an accident in 2003 left her disabled in excruciating pain and without hope of recovery, Brandy began searching for a cure. Through years of exploring every avenue for healing, Brandy eventually discovered obscure research that changed the course of her life and resulted in a complete recovery. Now she is releasing her brand new cutting-edge book, Master Your Mind and Energy to Heal Your Body, where she shares the hidden research that is the key to her success. Several researchers and doctors have referred to Brandy's new book as a must-read. It holds an incredible missing key to healing. The reality is that our minds possess an extraordinary ability to heal, far beyond the placebo, and Brandy's new book helps the reader understand the missing link to mind-body healing and provides a simple, step-by-step process on how we can all access this hidden healing potential of our own minds. Brandy, welcome to Rebel Spirit Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick. It is just wonderful to be here with you.
Well, thank you. I am very interested to speak with you about your journey here. I am a big believer that the mind has a definite effect on our body. So I'm really curious to talk to you about this. I thought the best place we could begin would be with your story about your injury.
Absolutely. You know, I was injured, and basically, kind of backing up a bit, I used to do network engineering and operations. So I was very analytical, and I had an accident, and technically two accidents. I had a car accident and a fall, and I fell just wrong, just right, however you want to say it. But I went from living a full life to being wheelchair, walker, cane, on morphine every day. And my doctors telling me there was nothing else they could do for me. And
Wow.
it changed my life.
Yeah. And how long were you in this state? How long were you wheelchair bound?
I was on a good day, I could get around with a walker or a cane, and it was about 6.5 years.
Okay.
And a mess. And on a bad day, I didn't even make it out of bed. I was just in so much pain, and my body, I was tiny. I lost muscle mass, and I was a train wreck.
Wow. And so what began to turn this around for you?
There were certain insights that just started opening my eyes. I think one that was really pivotal was the awareness that people with multiple personalities could have different illnesses and different personalities. They could be blind. There's even a study of a woman who was blind, medically blind, in one personality and not in another. And what was also fascinating is, of course, is with multiple personalities, is it the same person, the same personality always had the same ailment?
Hmm.
And that was fascinating. And not, that they were making it up. I mean, it could be something like blood pressure or asthma or allergies, like all kinds of things, body temperature, heart rate, all of these things. And of course, then there's other studies regarding the placebo and all of the nocebo. And so I started to just look at all of the myriad of ways that we know that our minds affect the physical body, even stress. And so it's all around us that the mind affects the physical body. And so when my doctor said that there was nothing they could do, and I tried diet and supplements and all of these things, and it wasn't working, I started to really work on figuring out, how did the mind work?
Yeah. Yeah. And so in your book, you kind of explain this journey, and the I found it fascinating, the multiple personality disorders. How did you stumble upon that? I mean, were you just like out of curiosity reading about them, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, what happened is, because I got invited into this study. So basically, when my doctor said there was nothing else they could do, and I had been doing nerve ablations, infusions, injections, all of these things, I kept saying, well, what else? What else? And so then I started going to these top research hospitals where there would be 3, 4 doctors who would come in and see me and then try to make a plan from, of what I could do. And so I was going to all these research hospitals. And then finally this study came up and they got me into this research study. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get my life back. And a long story short, uh, they also said that they said I wasn't going to get better. So they kind of kicked me out of the study and said, look, we don't actually expect you to get better. You can't be a part of this study. And after that, it had me thinking about the placebo. And so I started researching the placebo. I thought, well, if in a study, people can take this fake pill and they can have results from a fake pill, then what is it in the mind? And that's what set me researching. And then I thought, okay, I have to at least get out of pain, because I had neurological disorder. I had all these spinal end plate fractures, all of these different things. And I thought, well, I just need to get my pain down so I could at least think and be more clear. And then I started reading that people who were amputees had an 80 to 90% chance of still experiencing phantom pain. And then I was really frustrated and I thought, great, so I could amputate my whole body and there's still an 80 to 90% chance I'm still going to be in pain. And so I was a little frustrated, annoyed about hearing that. And then I just thought, well, how does the placebo work? And so I started researching all of these things. And instead of avoiding anomalies, where I think a lot of people, they go, oh, well, the placebo. Okay. Well, a lot of these anomalies we avoid. And I started saying, okay, well, how do they work? And started looking at them.
Okay. Yeah, the placebo effect is really interesting because often scientists will say, oh, well, that's just the placebo effect, but they never bother to explain that what's going on there is something really profound. And they just like disregard the mechanisms in a way, but then just will use it as an excuse, it seems.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that really blew my mind even about the placebo is the awareness, because after the placebo, I was like, okay, well, believing you're already healed, I could do this. And I was like forcing myself to believe I was already healed. And then I found the open label placebo, which was exactly like it sounded, open label, where both the doctor and the patient both know it's fake and it still works. And I thought, like, wait a second here. And so, yeah. And one of the things that's also really fascinating is even with the nocebo. So if somebody takes a pill and they're told the same pill, they're told that this is going to normalize your blood pressure, then it does. But somebody else is told, well, this is going to, increase your blood pressure, side effect, then it can. And so it's fascinating how information, goes throughout the body.
Yeah. So you were doing this research. You started, researching the multiple personality disorders and the placebo effect. When did you start healing? Because I think there are some other pieces that are missing here in your healing
I,
journey. So,
I would say this. I would say, I would say this. I would say that I had a lot of ups and downs. I would start, like, So with meditation and things like theta state and all of these things, I could get my pain to come down. Sometimes I would say probably, we'll say 40 to 60%, depending upon the time and this, that, the other. Sometimes it didn't budge at all. And so it was just this mix of not understanding. So I would say, I mean, I was working with my mind for from for a long period of time. So probably 2004 to 2009. So it was about 6 years of really, really in-depth looking at everything and trying to figure it out. So I would say I had ups and downs. I would say that certain things could bring my pain down, but then not gone. And it was kind of tricky.
But what was the turning point? What got you out of that wheelchair and able to walk without a cane?
I would say one of the turning points was that I had a friend whose aunt was passing. And my friend asked me if I wanted to go say goodbye. And I said, yes. And so she picked me up and she took me over there to her aunt's house. And her aunt had been in hospice care for several months and was kind of in and out of consciousness. And as I said goodbye, I had this just awareness that I thought, gosh, that's probably what I look like, because I spent so many hours with my earphones in, listening to guided meditations and theta state and delta state and blah, 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 like doing all of these things to get in this deep state of relaxation where I was kind of in and out of consciousness. And I thought, well, if this deep state of relaxation of being in and out of theta and delta state was so healing, then why isn't she healing? And that was really pivotal for me to say, I don't want to go out like that. I don't. And if this isn't healing, I get relaxation can help. I get it. Absolutely. But I need to figure out something else, because if this was the end to the cure, she hasn't made it, and neither has anybody else who's been in this state. And so it made me radically change. It impacted me. That was one thing. I would say, again, there were so many things. I mean, I had a really bad time at the hospital one time along the way. And it was just like this horrible experience where there was some errors and whatnot. And so there was different experiences that then made me say, never again. I have to change. And I would try to figure it out. And it was a process. But I would say there were just pivotal things along the way. And once I started to understand, I would say another huge breakthrough was understanding the combination of emotions. That was key as well. So a simple way to put it is like this: is when I started to realize that I look at it all objectively, and I said, okay, well, how does the mind affect the physical body? And I said, well, of course, emotions. I can see that. If somebody's embarrassed, their face turns red, or panic attack, anxiety attack, or sexual thought, sexual physical response. And so I started thinking, well, at first I thought, well, I need a lot more than emotions to heal my body. I mean, I was a mess. And another part of me thought, well, how much can emotions really impact the body? And so I started thinking about things like the widowhood effect, or even broken heart syndrome, where somebody could actually die of a broken heart, or even scared to death, where somebody could be so scared, their heart stops. And so I started taking emotions more seriously and really understanding that there was a combination was key. So I would say I started looking at emotions and seeing that, okay, well, what are all the other emotions doing? That was profound. Like, we could see some emotions are affecting the body, even to the point of death. What about the other emotions? So that was one piece. Another piece was that going through this whole thing, I started to look at it objectively, and I said, okay, but somebody can be extremely stressed. They can have PTSD and not have illness, and somebody else can have less trauma and have illness. And what I began to really realize was that it depended on the combination of emotions. And a simple analogy I use is that, if somebody wants to make cake and they have flour, they can't make cake. But if they mix it with flour and eggs and butter, or vegan eggs and butter, et cetera, they can make cake. And of course, different ingredients make a different recipe. And then what I started to realize is the combination of emotions was really key.
Okay, yeah, that touches upon something I wanted to ask you about, because these are negative emotions that we're talking about. And I'm very curious about why some people would, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I guess I'm trying to ask is, have you identified the key when it happens? Because, for example, I damaged my shoulder like a week and a half ago at the gym, and it was my own stupidity. I was lifting more than I should have, and it's getting better. It's getting a lot better. But someone else may end up in very intense pain for an extended period of time because there's this negative emotion that is triggered here. So, was there like does there have to be a trigger, an emotional trigger followed by some kind of physical um, event? Have you figured anything like that out?
So does there have to be an emotional does there have to be an emotional component followed by a physical event? Is that the question?
Yeah, or yeah, I guess so. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I would typically say in a case of a shoulder, let's say somebody felt like there was a lot of stuff to do day to day. There was a
Mhm.
lot of stuff to do, and it's just like, oh, there's a lot of weight on my shoulders. I would say if somebody had been feeling like that for a while and feeling like they just
Yeah.
weighed down by the day to day stuff, that there can be
Okay.
some type of incident that comes up.
Okay.
And then I would also say, as far as how fast a person can heal afterwards, I would say this. I would say that, even when we think about post-operative studies, so we think about people who have surgery, they have an operation. After surgery, people who are optimistic, who are happier, have a much faster
Mm.
recovery, faster cellular proliferation, like faster healing.
Right.
And people who are in fear or in negativity have a much higher chance of rehospitalization, complications, slower healing, all of that. So I would also say, on a spiritual note, everything happens for a reason. So I would say, yes, there's an emotion leading up to it. And the emotions that then follow also can impact it. And I would say, going back to the
Okay.
simplicity of optimism.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a major feature in your book is changing the emotional landscape and being positive, kind of working through the negative emotions. Is that fair to say? You have to identify them and then kind of replace them.
Absolutely. And a simple way to think about it is like this is, if we take an example of somebody who has felt unloved since they were 5,
Mm.
and maybe they're so used to that that's how they feel. And that's been a pattern repeated, repeated, repeated. And in some way, it's affecting their health. Well, a lot of people, they say, well, if I could just get rid of this pattern, then I would feel better. So they try to face the negative emotion, cut the cord, delete it, the hurt, the unloved, the abandonment, whatever it is. But we need to really establish new neural pathways. And one way to think about it is if I said, well, I'm going to get rid of speaking English tomorrow, I wouldn't expect to be able to speak French suddenly. And so a lot of times what happens is people try to get rid of a pattern, and they just try to get rid of the pattern, but they're not really establishing new positive neural pathways and new ways of being to be able to create that change.
Okay. It seems like it depends quite a bit on neuroplasticity, the idea that the brain can change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have to create new neural pathways. Without that, chances are we're not going to get lasting results. One of the things that people love about my work is that I can show healing and show people releasing pain even under medical equipment. So you can
Right.
see it. And I'll show people to do that in a matter of minutes, where you'll see a scan where a person has pain and you can see all over the scan, it's all red, they have pain. And I'll show them how to use their mind to release their pain. And I always tell everybody, you have to make sure to follow through and ingrain it to create this new way of thinking and feeling. And so it's your new norm,
Mm,
because so it is. So we have to really change the brain.
mm. Yeah. And how do you, I mean, I kind of know because I haven't read the book, but how do you help people identify possible emotional blockages that they are, maybe blockage isn't the correct term, but emotional roots to physical ailment?
Absolutely. I would say this. I would say that, one way I started looking at it, and Florence Scovel Shinn is a metaphysical teacher from the early 1920s, and her work was grounded in the awareness that different parts of the body were kind of related to our thought patterns. And by the way, I think most people probably maybe know Louise Hay a bit better. Louise Hay, Florence Scovel Shinn was Louise Hay's kind of mentor, role model, if you will. But she came up with the concept that, okay, well, if your eyes, if there's something wrong with your eyes, maybe there's something you don't want to see. If there's, something wrong with your ears, then maybe it's something you don't want to hear. Now, basically, I kind of expanded on this, and I would say that even in my experience, I would say what emotions come up or are triggered with the specific ailment. So a lot of times there is a logic about it. In my case, I had a neurological disorder, so I had an abnormal reaction to my nervous system, and I asked, why is my nervous system reacting abnormally? And I started to then be able to see with even more clarity, and just using the steps, just going through it and saying, okay, well, why is this, and why, and going through it. And I was able to get clarity as to why my nervous system was abnormally reacting. And so I would say it becomes understanding our bodies at a deeper level, understanding that our bodies are giving us a message. And when we get the message, there's a gift in change. And I think that that's something that I really, really love.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked when you were writing about this in the book because, like I said, my shoulder has been bothering me. And I started thinking through it with what you were writing. And I was thinking in terms of the shoulders of like, having the weight of the world on my shoulders and various other ways. Just in basic language, we often speak in terms of the body carrying various things.
Yeah, that's why I put that in there, because when you
Yeah.
start to see it, it's brilliant. So there's idioms all
Yeah.
around us where somebody might say, oh, so and so stabbed me in the back. Or they might say, oh, so and so is a pain in the neck,
Mm.
or all of these things. Now, shoulders can be a little tricky because it can be like the weight of the world on your
Mm.
shoulders, or it can also be, for example, let's say we're holding on to somebody and then we're trying to then rip away
Mm.
from them. That then creates that, like somebody having a torn rotator cuff or
Yeah.
this, that, the other, and not necessarily loving. I've seen this where people have a business arrangement and then they want to just rip away from it, and now they have a show.
Yeah.
Like there's ways that it comes up.
Yeah, yeah. You describe a woman in the book that was thinking about leaving her husband, and I think it was a like a rotator cuff tear or something.
hmm Absolutely.
Yeah,
And her doctor said it wouldn't heal, and that surgery, and she did. She healed
yeah,
herself, and I see people do that from all kinds of things all of the time.
yeah. The other thing that I found quite interesting is, and this applies to this woman that we're speaking about, that there were other effects, not just physical effects, but seemingly profound life-changing effects.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love is that, if we think about emotions and we start to think about patterns, a simple way to think about it is like this, is that, if we look at Freud's work, we know things like repetition compulsion or reenactments or attachment theory. And basically they're all different ways of kind of saying we attract the same type of thing. We can attract a partner that's much like, our parents, or, the example that I use all the time is a woman can have an abusive father and leave him and find the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, etc. So that pattern can just continue on. And people have these patterns, and a lot of times they don't see them. And maybe they could be a pattern of rejection or abandonment or self-criticism or whatever it is. And what's beautiful is that the way I look at it is this, is that when we have some type of illness, it's like a spiritual check engine light. It's like a car. If the check engine light comes on in a car, it's saying, hey, something is off, you need to fix it. And similarly, when we have a health issue, it's saying, hey, something is off, we need to fix it. And let's say it's a pattern of self-criticism. Imagine what it looks like if somebody has a pattern of self-criticism that's affecting their entire life. And if they keep it for the next 60 years, or if they get rid of the pattern of self-criticism and instead change it to self-confidence or self-acknowledgement, and how they feel in their relationships and their life who they become, what they accomplish, just in general. Maybe it's with their kids, their family, whatever, or in business or whatever it is. I use the term accomplish in a way that everything is abundant, friendships, relationships, and whatnot, but it's pivotal. And so when we really take these patterns, these unconscious patterns, and we change them, it becomes life-changing.
Yeah. I appreciate the self-inquiry that is involved in this process, but sometimes people don't want to look. And do you think that the physical ailment, physical pain is sort of the body, maybe even something beyond the body saying, hey, no, you need to take a look. You need to look in.
I would say that is true. I would say that I would say it's, well, this is what I would say. This is kind of how I look at it on a technical level, is also like this, is that if we have some type of example, probably the best example is this, is if somebody has a stroke, they can have a right brain stroke and it can affect the left side of the body. And on the left brain stroke can affect the right side of the body. And I would say, on some level, we look at it, and emotions that are going on in the brain can then affect a corresponding part of the body, depending upon where they are. So I would say that if we look at it on a spiritual level, I would say that we are one with universe. And so I would say it is a wake up call. It makes us have to change. And even if people don't want to dive into the negative, the great thing is this, is that the process always starts with lifting even further into the positive and amplifying it even more. And I think that the more people then lift themselves and feel even more elated and understand how to create these new neural pathways to feel amplified, it's like you notice that life starts changing, and it makes you addicted. You can become addicted to change and self-help and transformation because you see your life getting better. And I think that's what I've experienced for a lot of people, that even if they're not ready for the whole thing, they start changing, and then they see improvement. They go, okay, I want more than that, more of that.
Yeah. Good point. So someone identifies some negative emotions, perhaps, that they see at kind of the core of their physical ailment. They have to start thinking more positively. But how does someone go about doing that? What are some of the mechanisms at play in this healing process?
I would say this. I would say that, what does somebody do to start thinking more positively? I would say that, I mean, there's keys to doing exactly that. And it's, I mean, there's a few things. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm stuttering because there's a couple complexities, and I
Yeah.
like to make everything simple. And I
Right.
would say that this is one issue, is a lot of times when people decide to think more positively, they just say, well, let me think positive. And our brain works in patterns. That is, we know that we have neuroplasticity, we have neural pathways. So our brains have paths in them, neural pathways, so to speak. So not, yeah. So kind of giving a metaphor is, if we think about a large field of grass, and we think about, if somebody walks through the grass a different way every day and a different way every day, we don't create a path. But if we can walk through the same way every day, every day, every day, we create a path. And so one thing that I started looking at when I was even working on myself is, I said, I want my brain to automatically be happy for me. Like, I need my brain, so it's not always thinking and effortful. I need it to automatically do this. And so creating new neural pathways. One way to shift the brain is exactly that, is create new positive neural pathways. So then it becomes easy, and it's easy to stay positive. So I'd say that's one thing. I would say understanding that our brains can block us from bringing in positivity. I would say that is a key that a lot of people overlook. And so if our brains are blocking us from bringing in the positive, we need to address that too. And so I would say that. I would say bringing in positive emotions, bringing them in really strong, amplifying them, bringing them in repeatedly, getting good at creating new positive neural pathways, understand what's blocking us from creating those, making sure to get rid of those. And so we start bringing in the positive, bringing in even more of the positive, creating a new neural pathway, and then also deprogramming the negative. Because a lot of times, in another misconception when working with the emotions and the mindset, is a lot of times people will either just try to get rid of a trauma, and usually a trauma is connected to a patterned way of thinking. So it's important to address the pattern, not just the trauma. But I would also say the brain's holding on to it for a reason. And so creating that shift also requires us to rewire the brain so the brain wants to let it go. And one simple way to illustrate this is if you think about somebody who has pride in hardship. Well, if they have pride connected to hardship and they want to let the hardship go, but it's connected to their pride, but they want to let the hardship go and it's connected to pride, it feels like a constant struggle. And so, or people might feel like love is connected to sympathy. And then they have a problem and they want to let it go, but gosh, it's connected to love. And consciously, they're like, I don't care. Consciously, they're like, I don't care about this pride. I don't care about this sympathy. I don't care. But that our subconscious mind, we need love. We need connection. And so it's about rewiring the brain is also, so there's certain keys to being successful to create that real pivotal change.
Okay. One of the, I guess maybe, I don't know if exercise is the correct term, but it's a technique that I really appreciated was the use of music. You called it the neural transformational music technique.
Yes, I love that. This technique, it is so simple and yet profound, and simple and yet profound. And I'm going to tell you, even as I explain it, all the time people make mistakes in it. So I'm going to explain it very, very carefully because it's so simple. There can be mistakes with it, but very simply, to make a new neural pathway, to create a new neural pathway, what do we have to do? We have to get information in repeatedly over and over and over again. So like the alphabet, when we learn the alphabet, we have to get it in over and over and over. If we're memorizing a song, whatever it is, we have to get the information in repeatedly. Now, for me to go from this emotional state of not wanting to live, in extreme pain, stressed, wounded, just this mess, to then like, oh, well, let me bring in happiness every day for at least 30 days to then program this into my mind. That wouldn't have been really realistic. And so as I thought about how do I do this, I started thinking about music. And I had been using all the frequencies and the binaural beats and all those things. And I was like, okay, it's not about just relaxation. That can be great. But how do I really create a radical shift? And so what I would do is I picked 2 songs to start with. And one was Beautiful Day by U2. And the other one was Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. And I would sit there and listen to the songs and I would just amplify the feeling as much as I possibly could, just amplifying it, feeling it as much as I could, because I wanted to create more endorphins. And studies have shown that if you, dopamine and all of that. So basically studies have shown that if you listen to music and you're elated, then that can help bring in positive biochemical changes. And so I just wanted to get out of pain. I wanted to reprogram my mind. So that's what I did. Now, I mentioned sometimes people will make a mistake right off with this. And basically what they'll do is they'll go, oh, I've heard of this. I should do a happy playlist. And even though a happy playlist can be great, it doesn't create the new neural pathway. So having a happy playlist is a wonderful thing, but having specific patterns, specific ways of thinking and feeling that you program in regularly for a period of time was a profound shift. And it helped me to access these emotions that I would have otherwise not had access to.
Yeah. Now, when you started getting better, were you incorporating movement along with the song? Because it seems to me that at some point, just getting up and doing a little bit of a dance with it might actually help quite a bit.
Oh gosh, no, not
No?
where I was.
Okay.
Dancing would have been a bit beyond my physical ability. So what I started doing, because I mentioned also the movement. So there are some somatic
Yeah.
integrations. And what I started doing initially, because movement made my body hurt,
Yeah.
is I just moved my hands at first. So I would,
Okay.
like, when I had my vision, I would just and so I would move as little as possible. Because if not, if I, like, there were times I was in so much pain that I didn't even want to breathe. I would
Right.
take breaths at a shallow level as to not trigger more shooting pain, because I had burning pain and shooting pain and all of it. So yeah, I would say that was it. And if somebody can do that, absolutely. So
Yeah.
bringing in any movement that can amplify the emotion, I would strongly recommend. I just could not have done that at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I meant eventually.
Eventually,
Yeah.
yeah, but it took me, yeah. So it took me a minute to, because especially I was very, very kind of, I guess I would call it in some ways fragile. I mean, my
Yeah.
upper body, my arms, because I had a wheelchair, walker,
Hmm.
cane, were very thin, but they were still muscular because I
Hmm.
was always using my upper body, but my lower body was just very weak and thin and frail and whatnot. So to kind of give you an idea, something that I did do during my rehabbing is, because I was so used to using some type of device to help with walking, is that when I did say, okay, I'm just done with my cane, that's it, I'm throwing it away. I was trying to work on walking, and I would go to lose my balance, and I would like flap my arms. And so what I started doing is I would sit on a yoga ball, and then I would tilt it over to the side and then catch myself with my foot, and then the other way and catch myself with the foot. And so I trained to get my reflexes back into my legs, so my legs were catching my balance.
Right.
So dancing was a little beyond me at that
Yeah.
point. But
Right.
eventually, yeah, I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea if anybody can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, like I said, I knew eventually because it
Yeah.
took you a while. But you're talking about something I wanted to ask about anyway, which was how did you start that physical rehabilitation to rebuild your strength?
Really, I had kind of an ongoing physical rehabilitation kind of almost throughout. I mean,
Mm,
I would go to water physical therapy where they would have me move around like in physical therapy. Then I think after a while, my insurance didn't cover it. And so
mm,
I had stopped going for a while. So I would say, but then, yeah, so I would say at the time that I really, really, really started healing and whatnot, initially, I was not doing any type of physical therapy. And then I got to this point where this is what I started doing is, as I was working on healing myself and my pain was going down and my pain was going down, I was so excited. And what I started doing, so it wasn't a lot of movement, is I would just hold something and like hold weights or cans of vegetables at the time. And I would hold them as long as I could and then let them go. So it wasn't a
mm,
lot of movement.
mhm.
And then that escalated to, then I had a gym that was very close to my house. And then I would go into the gym with my walker and or cane, I can't remember which at the time. But then I would like just take a weight and I would hold it and then I would leave.
Yeah.
And so that was, and then this is what happened, which was really beautiful, was that as I kept going over like this 5 month period of time, maybe even 4 months, 5 months, somewhere in there, these bodybuilders came up to me and they said, we have never seen anybody do what you've done. We've been watching you, and for
Mm,
you to go from that injury to that, and
mm.
you're like, you can come work out with us anytime. And I
Wow.
was like, okay, great. And I started working out with them. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, I'm like doing leg presses and all of these
Wow.
things.
Yeah. So how long did it take you once you recognized the importance of the mind and the emotions? How long did it take you from this sort of realization to full health?
You know, I would say the clarity that I have now, I didn't have then. So it was, I mean, I would say that it's a mixed bag. So even when I mentioned that I was working out with these bodybuilders, so I started working out with
Mhm.
them and it was really great and I was getting my strength back. Now, some of the things I was still figuring out and gaining clarity about. So even every so often, I would suddenly get shooting pain back and I would be like,
Yeah.
ah,
Yeah.
and it would be there. And then I would fix my mind and then it would go away.
Mm,
And so I was still figuring everything out. So it's and not only that, the other thing is that when you really don't care what day it is, or
mm.
it's hard to really, and you don't sleep so well and whatnot, it's hard to really give an accurate
Right.
time. I would say that 5 month period from when like that was hugely, and then I would say beyond that, trying to figure out and understand what else was going on, I would say that it was, I don't know. I don't know, maybe it's 6 months. It
Okay.
was just then I don't really know because
Right. Right.
I was figuring it out, and then so I don't, it's,
Okay.
yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. It's a process. And it seems to me that if someone is in such an extreme pain like you were, that the time it takes doesn't matter that much. What's important is that the pain ends and you get better and you found that path.
Yeah, I would say this. I would say that another person who went through my video course and whatnot, she went from bedridden for almost 8 years, could only eat like 8 foods, to walking, and it took her 9 months till she was walking, and then another 2 months until she walked her first marathon, and then a week later she got her driver's license again. And so
Mm.
everybody's in a different, it
Right, right.
really,
It seems
it's,
like it seems like it's almost exponential though. Once the healing starts, it seems like it does kind of get a little bit quicker as you move forward.
I would say it depends on what a person's willing to change. Because kind of like this, I mean, she was able to change what she was able to eat, and
Mm.
she had massive allergies, so, and pain, and so I would say it depends. I mean,
Okay.
most people, I mean, for people to release pain, it is normal for me to show somebody how to release their own pain in 10 minutes to an hour, usually
Okay.
less, and to release their own pain. And half a percentage of people, it'll never come back, and a
Mm.
percentage of people will need to really, really, really follow through. So I would say it really depends. It's kind of like this. Some people, it depends on what they have to shift and how many
Mm.
layers there are.
Yeah.
Because somebody may, I mentioned the situation with the woman who has that abusive father, who leaves him and finds an abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse.
Mm.
Now, let's say part of what I work with her on is healing her mindset, and she shifts out of pain. And then she still needs to then, she has a abusive or something that triggers her regarding, some type of, like, so there could be depth there,
Mm.
and likely would be. And so but in another person, they may say, oh, okay, well, I've been afraid of men, and that doesn't even make any sense. There are plenty of nice, wonderful, incredible men all around the world, and that doesn't even make any sense. And
Mm.
so it it depends on, everybody's situation.
Okay.
Real
Um,
change is the key.
yeah, yeah. And all that's fair. All of that is totally fair. One of the things I really appreciated in your book is there were a few instances where you told the reader, don't fire your doctor. You still want to hold on to your doctor. And I found that incredibly valuable and responsible. You have published in a prestigious medical journal, excuse me. So I wanted to talk about kind of traditional medicine for a moment because it has its values, but it also has its limits. And I wanted to ask you about the publication, but also how you might envision the work that you've done, this healing work, how it might enter into traditional medicine.
Absolutely. So, as far as, so kind of to answer this, a lot of, the nutshell is this: is first and foremost, what I always tell people is, I say, of course, medications, have your doctor pay attention to your medications, all of these things, monitor your health. And then I also say, you know what, blow your doctor's mind with what you're capable of with your mind.
Mm.
And so that, like, I always want people, yes, see their doctors. And I think that a lot of doctors are becoming more and more
Mm.
aware. I think even if you think about it, Dr. Perlmutter wrote the foreword to my book,
Mm.
and even wrote something along the lines of, this is like a missing piece that should be in our medical system, which are huge words, considering he didn't just write it as a friend. I don't know him as a friend. Somebody
Yeah.
said to him, hey, you've got to check out this book.
Mm.
And he wrote it, and that's what I love, is he wrote it based on the book. And it was like, this is what I feel like the medical system is inadvertently overlooking, or something to that effect. And so I think that it's logical. So this is how I feel, is that to create a real movement, it's estimated, research estimates that it takes about 20 to 25% of a population to create a real shift, in a
Mm.
paradigm shift in our world. Now, when we come to mind body healing, we say, okay, well, how can we get results, or how can we create this shift? We have to really understand that we have to be able to get results, and we have to know why we're getting results. And I feel like part of the thing is that somebody might say, oh, well, it's Buddha. And somebody else says, no, it's Jesus. No, it's God. No, it's, it's okay. It's this, it's that, it's meditation. It's this, that, and okay, we've got a bunch of different techniques and theories and this, that, the other. And to be able to create a real change, we have to be able to get back to back to back results. And we have to understand why it's working.
Hmm.
And even thinking about religion for a moment, I mean, in the Bible, it's literally written in the Bible, a merry heart is a medicine to the body.
Hmm.
Ill thoughts will dry the bones. So this is written throughout spiritual practices, metaphysics, and so really what I wanted to do was bring a common understanding. So my hope is from this is that, more and more of the allopathic medicine is waking up to the awareness that yes, stress affects the body. I mean, in fact, the Surgeon General last year released an entire warning on loneliness being an epidemic, and that loneliness can, increase diabetes and all these different illnesses. And recently Harvard also released a study suggesting that autoimmune conditions were caused by stress. And so there's more and more of this research starting to show up, which is exciting to me because, I've been better at doing this work now for well over a decade. And my injury was now over 20 years ago. And so when at my accident point, and so it's exciting to me to watch this change taking place. And even the fact that a medical journal was able to that I could publish my work and say, hey, we can see this. And so that's what excites me. And I think that the more that we can say, we can have our spiritual beliefs, and yes, universe, God, divine energy. I mean, there's so much, and I could go there's so much more. I have a very technical side, and I also have a very woo side, if you will, and going into energy and all of that. And as I do in my book. And so that's my hope is what the reason that what I kind of call it is this is it's kind of like the 4-minute mile. You're familiar with the 4-minute mile, which for everybody is kind of, it used to be thought that it was impossible for a human being to run a mile in 4 minutes or less until Roger Bannister, I believe it was in the 1950s, finally he did it. And then after he did it, more and more people starting to do it. They realized it was possible. And all of the time, what I see now is I see people who heal themselves and they go, oh my gosh, I healed myself from pain or from a headache or all kinds of things. The more people are aware of this and aware it's that our subconscious emotions are the problem, the more people are actually doing something about it and using it. And that's the way I see it, is I like the 4-minute mind. And I kind of started calling that for a bit, the 4-minute mind, but I didn't want people to think they have to heal in 4 minutes.
Right.
It's not about that, but it's about, I just feel like it's just going to continue to expand from here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we are in a great turning. I'll say it that way right now.
I like that.
Yeah. I know a lot of people talk about paradigm shifts and whatnot, but I'm trying to avoid that for some reason. One of the things, I know that we are almost out of time, unfortunately, but one of the things, I'm jotting notes down all the time while you're talking, but I think that one of the things that we need to do, or medical professions need to do, is kind of change a little bit of wording. And the word that I am thinking of is psychosomatic, because I think the common understanding of that is, oh, well, it's all just in your head.
Mhm.
And I'm curious if you have, and this, I'm putting you on the spot here, if you could change the wording of psychosomatic to incorporate the power of the mind with the body so that it's not just, waving away, oh, it's all just in your mind. How would you describe it? What terminology might you use?
To be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of labels because I
Yeah.
feel like the more labels people have, the more that they take the issue and create it as part of their identity. And then they have a harder time getting rid of it.
That's fair.
But I would say this is that if it was one person, you might think, I wonder. Or even if you think about amputees, there is a pain there. And what I love, and part of the reason that I love doing my work under medical equipment where you can see it, is because you can actually see pain is there. You see that the body has this radiating heat from pain. And so I think that it's kind of like this. I would say this. I would say we've been negating, medically speaking, negating the placebo, negating the nocebo, multiple personality disorder. This research is not what I discovered. It's been around for years and years and years. And yet we've had a history of taking information, anomalies, and ignoring it and saying that's unimportant. Let's just do medications and move it forward. So anything we can't explain, we just shove it aside and move forward. And I think we can see where it's gotten us. I mean, illness is increasing exponentially. More and more people are sick. 1.5 billion people live in chronic pain. I mean, we can see it's gotten us. I mean, it's gotten us so far. And I would say that we need to make a change.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and a lot of people are depressed and a lot of people are stressed. So it seems like the numbers together support exactly what you're saying.
Mhm. Absolutely. And what's beautiful is that I know that going through my injury, if I would have just said, "Oh, well, a, a supplement, oh, finally cured me," I would have still felt like I missed out on those 6.5 years of my life. This is how I feel. I feel like the amount of change and who I am and what I learned from my injury, I wouldn't want to ever go through it again, but I wouldn't take it back if I could, because the way it changed my entire life.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, thank you, universe. And I don't need to go through it again.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that we are out of time, so let me ask you very quickly, what do you have coming up? What
What
are
do
you
I have?
working on next? Yeah.
Well, I have some classes coming up. My book just launched, and that's exciting. And so I just my biggest goal is exactly that, is showing results,
Mm.
results, results. So I have classes, workshops, and then
All
the
right.
book.
Okay. And
Mhm.
where can people go to find out more about you, your work, your classes, and the book?
Best place is my website, brandygillmore.com. And Gilmore is with two L's,
Okay.
GILLMORE.com. And one of the things that's really cool is there's a tab called See Live Healing, and you can actually see me working with somebody with their mind and shifting, helping them to shift out of pain under medical equipment. So you can see it. And
Yeah.
that's something that I love. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I will put a link for your website in the show notes in the video description and also for your book so people can find it a little bit easier. And so, one of the things I tell people, not everyone, but those who are working in healing, is that I so much appreciate the work that you're doing because I think that the world is in desperate need of healing. And so, I always applaud those who take up this mantle and push us forward to a better um, more joyous and less painful world.
I love that. And I have to tell you, and I don't always tell people this, but and depends. I do attract a lot of wonderful people, but you have a beautiful heart, and you're just, I love your questions were really, really great. And I just love the way that you show up, and I'm grateful for what you're doing in the world. It's just, and there are a lot of people I am, but just, you just have a uniqueness about you, and it's beautiful. So
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I wish we had more time to speak, but I know time is calling. So just thank you. And I hope the book is a smashing success.
thank you so much. Thank you, Nick. You're wonderful.
And that's a wrap on episode 130 of Rebel Spirit Radio. Thank you so much for listening or watching if you're part of my YouTube audience. If you like what I do here on Rebel Spirit Radio and would like to support my work, and please support my work, then consider becoming a patron. You can find the link for my Patreon in the show notes or video descriptions. There are a number of perks for patrons, including early access to episodes, ad-free episodes, the Rebel Spirit Radio Book Club, and quite a bit more. And of course, if you'd prefer to make a one-time donation, you can still do so via PayPal. I will be incredibly grateful for any support that you can provide. Another way that you can help the podcast is to share it with friends, family members, or even coworkers, anyone that you think will enjoy it. And please share it on social media too. That really is one of the best ways you can help and support the podcast. Help me grow my audience. So if you feel moved by the rebel spirit, and I sure hope that you do, then please, by all means, help me share the good news. Also, if you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to give it a positive rating on whatever platform you use to listen to or view podcasts. And please subscribe. For those viewing on YouTube, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, make sure you hit that notification bell so you will be informed when I upload new content. I'm Nick Mather, and you've been listening to or watching Rebel Spirit Radio. Until next time, may you be at peace, may you flourish in all possible ways, and may you continue to nurture your rebel spirit.